I mean, he started the first online mental health community, just changing how they could access information around mental health and brain health and happiness. He was the first to publish the diagnostic criteria for common mental disorders such as depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia, and has worked tirelessly as a patient advocate to improve the quality of information, which I can definitely testify to. He's made it available for all mental health patients, free, which is so incredible, and getting really good information about mental health is so important because there is so much misinformation out there. And he's highlighted quality mental health resources, and he's built a safe, private support community and social network and in numerous health topics. So he's a mental health and human behavior technology expert. He's co-author of Self-Help That Works, and he's the author of The Insider's Guide to Mental Health Resources. In 2001, he created the world's first mental health social networking community. This was before social networking like Facebook even existed, at PsychCentral, and he oversees the daily editorial of that. He's one of the leading mental health experts of networks online, and he offers consumers professionally reviewed mental health information, resources, news, research briefs, and the popular world of psychology blogs. They have over 30 million unique visitors a month. He's pretty amazing. He's been a really dear supporter of the work I've been doing, and great mentor and leader in this space. And
So a lot of people wonder, why would you get involved in an online community? Because it is something that probably doesn't come immediately to mind when you think about your own mental health and happiness. And why would you want to put yourself out there in an online community with what initially are a bunch of strangers, but they're not? And I'd like to kind of go through some of the reasons why a person might want to get involved in an online community. I think the first reason is pretty obvious. It increases a feeling of connecting with people like yourself. Now, obviously, no one comes from the exact same background, but when you're dealing with a mental health concern or even a health concern, I mean, you can generalize this for anything. It really helps to talk to other people who have the same diagnosis, the same condition that you're looking for support. So whether it's depression, bipolar disorder, or whether you're just looking for motivation to reach life goals, this doesn't have to be just about disease. It's about your mental health and happiness, and that all flows from getting to know yourself and to getting help with things like procrastination, things like getting motivated to get tasks done and get them done on time. A lot of people turn to online support groups for emotional support. it's really hard to go through a disorder or a condition on your own, by yourself. You feel super alone. If you're newly diagnosed, it is the worst feeling in the world. You feel like no one else can, no one can understand what you're going through. And so if you reach out to an online community, you'd be surprised to find out, yes, they don't know exactly what you're going through, but they have a pretty good idea of some of the general um, sense of the thoughts and feelings that you're having. And it really helps to share with that. Another reason why people get involved with online communities is it helps them stay connected and motivated and working toward their goals. Nothing kind of holds your feet to the fire than a therapist. So if you go into a psychotherapy session once a week, you feel like, well, if you had homework to do, you better have done it. Otherwise, you're going to feel like, I'm not really living up to what my therapist wants me to do. The same is true with online communities. You can go to them on a regular basis. Some people go every day, and you can help. You can help stay motivated by connecting with other people through the community, by posting about, hey, I'm not really feeling motivated today. Is anyone feeling the same? Does anyone have any tips to help try and get myself out of bed, because I really need to go to that appointment today that I had scheduled, but I'm just not feeling it. And so other online users can actually become your cheerleader, can become your person that helps you get to those goals that are important to you. Lots of people use online community just for a daily check-in or a weekly check-in. They like to sort of connect base and say, hey, this is what's going on with me. It makes me feel like I'm connected with the world, with a community of people who care and understand me, by just sharing, hey, this is how work was, this is how my family is, this is how my important relationships or friendships are. And that for a lot of people is useful and helpful, and that's why they turn to online community. Another reason that people like to get involved in online community has to do about looking for information about a condition and different treatments. One of the challenges, especially if you're newly diagnosed, is what is this all about? What can I expect, especially for like a new treatment? Like if I'm going on antidepressant medication, I've heard a lot of questionable things about what will happen, what some of the side effects are. And so talking to other people who've kind of gone through a very similar circumstance as you have can definitely be beneficial. And sort of related to that is it can answer questions that you have. So if you do have questions about, hey, how was that antidepressant medication for you? Now, obviously, two people taking the same medication won't even have necessarily the same side effects. But when you get 5 or 10 or 15 people chiming in about, oh, this is how that medication works for me, you get some clarity about things that you can expect. It doesn't become this big black hole of not knowing what is going to occur or what's going to happen. And so other users can help answer those questions. And a lot of people are concerned about, well, what kind of answers are they providing? Are they accurate answers? Are they useful? Well, ultimately, each person has to decide whether it's a useful or accurate answer. Very few people go into an online community expecting to talk to mental health professionals or doctors or anything like that. These are just ordinary other people who are also dealing with the same kind of thing. So you have to take it all with a grain of salt and take away from the online community about what is going to work for you. And some of the advice might be helpful and some of the advice might not be helpful. And that's the nice thing about anything you read online, is that if you do find it helpful, and it doesn't have any potential, harmful side effects, then you can usually try it. It's not usually something that you don't usually get advice in these online communities that is just horrible or so off base or just so disconnected with what you're doing. So, and then you can get different points of view and opinions from a group of people that eventually you'll come to trust. You may not trust them initially, but as you get to know them, you will start to understand that you can make very valuable and strong friendships online. And so this group of people in your online community can actually be as strong and helpful as your real world friends. Or if you don't have a lot of real world friends, there's nothing wrong with having a lot of good online friends. Those bonds of friendship can be stronger than the kinds of friendships that you make face to face. And you don't have to take my word for it. There's actually a lot of good scientific research that backs that up. And finally, people turn to online communities to feel a little bit less lonely, a little bit more connected with the world around them. The research is actually sort of mixed about online communities when it comes to feeling lonely, especially with social media. Social media tends to actually make people feel worse off in terms of loneliness. So I tend to suggest that people avoid social media if they're feeling depressed or lonely. It often does not have the intended effect that you would think it would. So I'd like to move on now and talk about the different types of online communities. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of different types of online communities that you can look at and that you can join. Everything from Facebook to Reddit to forums. First, we'll talk about, the elephant in the room, which is Facebook. Facebook groups have become super popular for health and mental health concerns. And there isn't anything technically wrong with joining a Facebook group for mental health. I actually run a Facebook group for mental health. It's not super active. We have about 5,000 or 6,000 members. But what you want to do if you do join a Facebook group is you're going to need to look for a closed group. Closed groups are private and they can only be read and viewed and the messages seen by other people who are members of that group. So you don't, if you post something to that group, it doesn't show up on your friends' Facebook news feeds. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, I want to share something to my Facebook group and suddenly all my friends know what's going on and they're not members of that group. So closed groups allow you to post stuff privately only to that group, and your friends cannot see what you post there unless they're also members of that group. So it tends to be pretty private, and I know that if you have concerns about privacy, then Facebook is probably not the place that you should be hanging out to talk about your mental health or health issues. You could also look for Facebook groups for just more general happiness things, like I just want to look at an image once a day that is that someone posts that is motivating or makes me smile. There's plenty of groups for that kind of sort of daily motivation, and you might feel more comfortable using Facebook for something like that. So there's a whole bunch of online forums. Online forums have been around since actually before the web. People don't realize that, CompuServe and other commercial services before the internet was opened up to the public actually had forums and stuff back in the 80s. So forums, although, exactly how they look and act have changed over the years, they've been with us for a very long time. And like email, they stay with us because they're very useful. They have a lot of functionality. Each forum website tends to be on its own, So the community feels more private, even if it isn't necessarily more private, because you have to register and become a user of that specific community. Probably one of the most well-known online forums is Reddit. Reddit it covers topics of everything that you can imagine, but it also has a lot of health, mental health, psychology topics. There's an example on the screen, Get Motivated, which is a great community if you're looking for sort of daily motivation sorts of things. And then there are a lot of smaller forums. There are forums like iFred has a forum. PsychCentral, the website I run, has an online community that we've been running since 2001, and we have a lot of members, a lot of active supportive members, and we're very focused on keeping it a supportive environment. So we actually don't allow talk about things that tend to get people angry and upset, things like politics, because there's a million places you can go talk politics online, and mental health community doesn't have to be one of them. So so that is forums. I like forums. I like forums better than Facebook groups, especially if they're run by responsible, mature people, and the community has been around for a long time and is active. People like to join an online community in ways that you probably wouldn't imagine. Things like Twitter and Instagram have vibrant online communities through hashtags. This is a very kind of public community, so you'll find more mental health advocates and health advocates using Twitter and Instagram for their advocacy efforts, but you will find a lot of mental health support going on in both of these kinds of communities. And if you don't mind putting all of your information out there and being fairly public about who you are and what you're grappling with, these kinds of forums can be very useful. And finally, there is something more private. It's called chat servers, and chat servers such as Slack or Discord typically are used in other areas more frequently. Like Slack is used by companies and technology companies and developers to communicate in real time. It's what kind of replaced Instant Messenger back in the old days. And but they can also be used for online support, and they are used for online support. There's actually a Discord server which is called the Haven, which is a emotional mental health support community that is based in real-time chat. So real-time chat, you have to be logged on at the same time as other people, and that can be a little challenging. But for some people, they like that real-time interactivity. In places like the Haven, they're moderated. They have a team of volunteers who are overseeing the chat server all the time. And there's usually some people logged in all day, all night, because they come from all over the world. So even though you might have insomnia in the US, someone over in Japan or England or India is logged in, and they're still using the server even though it's the middle of the day for them. So how do you get started with online communities? Well, one way you can get started is to use a community that you're already familiar with. Lots of people, for instance, are on Reddit or Twitter or Facebook, whatever. And so you might feel most comfortable just going to one of those kinds of platforms and looking for a community on a platform that you're already familiar with, that you feel comfortable in. You can also just use Google and type in the words, depression forum or something like that. And you will find a bunch of communities. So once you do find your community, you want to read its rules and guidelines. Too many people skip the step and then they kind of have a problem with the community's moderation team or another member because they didn't take the 2 minutes it takes to read forums rules. The rules are not like a terms of service. They're not legalese. They're just simple rules that each community has developed that work best for their community. So a lot of them will have a lot of similar things in them, but some communities have very specific rules or guidelines that, for instance, like an eating disorders community, there might be a rule not to talk about specific numbers. That's a very common kind of rule. So it does help to become familiarized with the rules and guidelines. If you're interested in joining that community, hey, go ahead and sign up for it. Keep in mind that one of the ways I like to sign up for communities is to use a unique pseudonym or username for each different community, because that kind of keeps all of my online profiles separate. It means that people can't as easily track me down if I want to talk about a men's health issue on a men's health community, and I don't want that kind of related back to my Facebook profile or my real name or something like that. So pick a pseudonym or a username that you probably don't use elsewhere on the internet. That gives you more privacy in the long run. You might think like, well, I don't really care about privacy. I don't need privacy. But that's right now. 5 years from now, you might have wanted that more privacy that you thought you didn't need. And the thing with the internet is that even if you think something is deleted or there's no trace of it, there usually is. So the online footprints stick around for a very long time, sometimes your entire life. Sit back and read, get familiar with the community, understand each community has its own unique norms and mores. And no two communities are really the same online, even though they might look the same or they like use the same kind of software, or they're both Facebook groups. They have very different, each community is very different based upon the makeup of its membership, how long it's been online, how active it is, things of that nature. You want to introduce yourself at some point. You want to, there's usually a new members introduction forum or a chat room or whatever, a thread that says, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is what I hope to get out of the community. So definitely introduce yourself at some point. It's like when you walk into a room at a party, you just don't, you can kind of stand in the background for a little bit to sort of get a feel for the room, but at some point you have to kind of come forward and say, oh, this is me. And that helps. Research shows that, I'll talk more about this in a minute, that the more interactive and engaged you are with the community, which is actually this next point, you need to chime in, you need to post, you need to become engaged with the community. The more engaged you are, the research suggests that the more an online community could be helpful to your mental health, to your happiness, things of that nature. And I can't emphasize this enough. A lot of people join a community, they check it out for a day or two, and then they kind of forget about it because there's so much stuff to do on the internet, or maybe they just didn't feel like they became a part of it immediately. And so it really helps if you do try and make it a part of your daily routine. I'm just going to quickly go through these. Look, you can start your own community, but it takes a lot of work to grow it. I think people underestimate the amount of work that it takes to get new users to a new community. And a lot of times communities live and die because they just didn't have enough members to interact with one another. If you are going to start your own community, it's very helpful to use an existing community platform whenever possible, like Reddit, Facebook, something of that nature. Make sure you define your rules up front, and don't sort of wait until it happens after the fact. People hate it when you sort of make up rules on the go, because it makes them feel like there's not a solid foundation in which to understand, why, how can I post like this? Why is it okay to post this way? And as your community does grow, hopefully it's super successful, you can find volunteers to help moderate your community, from spam, from people who are breaking the rules occasionally, things of that nature. I said it before, I'll say it again, make it part of your daily routine. Whether maybe daily is too much for you, make it part of a weekly routine. Check in 2 or 3 times a week, and that will also and can also be super beneficial. I like to end by saying community online can be anything you want it to be. It can help you lead a more rewarding and mindful life, but it also can help save a life during times of emotional distress. Online community can be really powerful, but of course, like all things, it depends on the community and the person who's using it. So I just wanted to end with a quick summary and saying the research suggests that online community helps boost well-being, increases shared connectedness, and it helps find the right community for you and your needs right now. Take the time to become a member of the community and participate mindfully and share responsibly. You have to keep in mind, you don't need to post every detail about your life. You can definitely keep some air of privacy about you. And if you're there to talk about your mental health concerns and your symptoms, talk about those. The people don't necessarily need to know every detail of your life. And I think that's important for privacy reasons. Thank you so much for your time today. I very much appreciate being a part of it.